Hello, my name is David Pruitt, and today I'm going to be speaking on Ezekiel chapters 36 through 37 and some of the research done on that periscope. The Valley of the Dry Bones is one of the most well-known visions in all of the prophetic books, maybe even in all of the Old Testament. It's often used in Christian circles from everything from pulpit teachings on new life to music, art, and all sorts of other media. But the scholarly exegesis on this prophetic narrative is actually pretty sparse, and rarely is it connected to the surrounding context of prophecies given. With the prevalence of this well-known narrative, little attention is actually given to what it means. This may be because it's so well rehearsed that people just skip over it, or it may be because Ezekiel is such a grand book of prophecies that it's hard to tackle on such a small periscope. Scholars are even divided on how to break up the sections in this book. Some think you should take chapters 33 through 48 as one whole unit. Some see the oracles given to Edom in chapters 35 fulfilled in chapters 36. Others think that you should take each individual section as its own prophecy and dive into it that way. Also, there has been such a wide range of interpretations for this particular periscope, everything from prophetic symbolism and allegory to eschatology and apocalypse. So it's very hard to tell what Ezekiel was trying to say to the people at the time. It must be remembered that Ezekiel was prophesying during the Babylonian exile when the Israelites had been taken out of the promised land. Add to this the fact that their religious and political center in the temple at Jerusalem being destroyed, and you have a very distraught people in need of hope. There's also great emphasis on the land in these two chapters, and the significance is seen in ancient Near Eastern cultures' reliance on the land for their well-being. Thus, the significance of the deity-nation-land relationship was astronomical not just for the Israelites, but for ancient cultures altogether. Thus, the reputation of Yahweh and his namesake was reliant upon him acting for the people to bring them out of exile back into his promised land for them. It is generally accepted that Ezekiel is both the author and editor of the entire book of his namesake, even though it seems to be sort of a mismatch or patchwork of prophecies smushed together. Generally, it's accepted that the chapters that we're talking about, their dating is between the destruction of Jerusalem and the return from Babylonian exile, but this is hard to gauge because Ezekiel uses the prophetic perfect tense, which conveys future events as happening currently. It should also be noted that in order to understand the restoration and prophetic hope given in these chapters, that one must look to the destruction that Ezekiel promised earlier in the book. So the entire book of Ezekiel should be seen as one whole unit reflecting itself, both with the hope in the later chapters and the destruction given in the earlier chapters. There's also a precedent that the framework for this whole book is given in Leviticus 18:5, specifically talking about obedience to the statutes of the Lord and how the people had not lived up to that. Thus, in order for them to come back into the land and live according to the Lord's statutes, that there had to be a revivification by the Spirit itself. There's definitely strong invocation of Levitical and Mosaic cleansing rituals in these two chapters, as the Spirit is pouring himself out and giving the people a new spirit and a new heart. There's also mirrors of God's creative work in Genesis, specifically relating to man and God breathing life into man to make him come alive. This word ruach, which means breath, wind, and spirit, is used a lot, especially in these two chapters, which makes sense because Ezekiel is known as the prophet of the Spirit. But what the dry bones in this passage represent is the absoluteness of man's mortality. They are absolutely destined to fail in the presence of God. And so only his omniscience of the future and his sovereignty to change that fate can save men from their ultimate doom. There are such grand theological themes within these two chapters. We see everything from the depiction of eschatological resurrection of the dead. We see messianic Davidic kingship bringing unity to God's people. We see a promise of a new covenant which fulfills the promises of the old covenant. We see a Pentecostal infilling of the Holy Spirit as he pours himself out to his people. But all of these are very Christocentric theologies, and we must remember that Ezekiel was not speaking to Christians today. His original audience was a very dead and broken nation, and he was trying to bring them prophetic hope. I hope this gave you a little more insight into what the Valley of the Dry Bones actually meant and how Ezekiel was trying to present it to his people. Thank you so much for watching, and have a blessed day.